Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. This month is National Read a New Book Month, the perfect time to dive into stories that expand our imagination and challenge the way we see the world. Today I'm joined by Michael Strangeland, author of the science fiction novel Junk World, The Ballad of Leroy Brown. Michael is not only a writer but also an entertainer who dabbles in stand-up comedy. When he's not crafting new words on the page, he's balancing life as a caretaker and surviving retail. He's working on multiple new projects, including a second book already in development, and he brings a sharp sense of humor and a deep love for storytelling. In today's conversation, we'll explore his creative process, the importance of discovering new books, and why stories, whether we read them or write them, shape who we are. That was a lot. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, September is National Read a New Book Month. What role has reading played
Oh,
in your own journey as a writer?
well, reading is one of those, I'd say one of those essential, important skills just in everyday life.
Yeah,
Yeah, for here we're focused on novels, but the written word in general is one of those cornerstones of civilized society. So, it's kind
yeah,
of hard to nail it down when you're talking
yeah,
about something that's so important because there's a huge
yeah,
difference between having to pass things along verbally and having it written down where where you've got a solid record of it. So how do you go with something like that? And really, it's
yeah. I guess the next question I would ask would refine it and make it very specific. Do you remember a book that first made you fall in love with science fiction or storytelling in general?
yeah, it is hard to name one particular book that said like this is why I like reading. There are books I could go on that, I like for various reasons, or, here are things that I've enjoyed reading in the past. I could make mention if you're looking for something to narrow down, I could potentially bring up what I'd say is my favorite work of fiction that I've loved
Okay.
since I was a kid.
Oh, what's that?
Well, this might be a bit of an odd answer, but it's um from Star Wars. It's
Yeah.
if where in some ways, Star Wars is, while it's science fiction, it's kind of a subgenre in and of itself. And there's one from the older expanded universe called X-Wing Starfighters of Adamar, which has stuck with me for it's very interesting because it is a Star Wars book, but it misses some of those key things that you might normally associate it with Star Wars, because
Yeah.
this is actually a book that is part of the Star Wars X-Wing series, which, for those are familiar with the movies, the central character in that is Wedge Antilles, who doesn't actually get major roles. But he's through all three, and he's one of the you kind of have a subtle story arc from New Hope to Return of the Jedi. Like in New Hope, he's that guy who says, "Well, that's impossible," and then by the time of Return of the Jedi, he's like the one guy who's taken on two Death Stars. Well, anyways, the X-Wing series is center. He's the main character of that. Anyways, in this book, the Starfighters of Adamar, he and and his closest pilots, well, they're responsible for a diplomatic mission to a planet where starfighter pilots are like the highest regarded people in this planet's society, which is, it's not, which is a common thing in science fiction. You have a planet that
Yeah.
are based around things, and it's interesting watching as they're assigned to this unusual mission, these pilots being assigned to the role of diplomats, as they navigate this and find things aren't quite as they seem, but not in a like they learn this. What they see up front, there's truth to it, but at the same time, there's another level underneath that they dig into. But like what I was saying is there are some things where you might expect with Star Wars that aren't here. This is a book. It's very firmly Star Wars, but for example, there's really no Jedi in it. There's like one reference to Luke Skywalker in it, but otherwise like there's no actual lightsabers, there's no use of the Force. So it's a very interesting book in that it's very much a Star Wars book, but at the same time it you could imagine this being a book that had no place in Star Wars and it would still largely be the same book. And it's, but I'd say there's certain elements. I mean, one of the things that's really stuck with me is its approach of, you've got a culture in this book where it's centered, as they see it, around starfighter pilots. And what it examines is, I guess there's a certain element of it's a matter of like a conflict of cultures and a certain of
Yeah.
like there are certain because what's interesting is that like in the beginning of the book, Wedge himself being like one of the best pilots there is, he's a joke about, hey, we should implement their system of pilots here. But then as the book goes on, he gets a deeper and it examines, hey, here's why this society and what they set up, here's why it's maybe not so great.
Yeah.
And it's yeah. I mean, there's
Yeah.
something about it, and maybe it's just based on when I read it
Yeah.
that because I think it is common that you know certain things that you learn or you get introduced to at a younger age,
Yeah.
those things oftentimes stick with you more.
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah. Can you tell us about Junk World, the Ballad of Leroy Brown? What inspired the story and what can readers expect?
Well, I'd say if there was a primary inspiration, it would be if you're familiar with things like battle bots, which is, people build these robots, sticking them in an arena and have them fight each other. Or alternatively, if you've ever heard of the movie Real Steel, the boxing robot
Yeah,
movie.
I watched it.
Ah, yeah. So I'd say if there's any one core inspiration, it would come from that because the story is about a former military robot who's been converted into this arena fighter, and through circumstances that he is certain is a mistake, he finds himself on this planet that's basically a giant junkyard planet. Like this is where people dump their unwanted machinery. Quite possibly it's a good place to put it if you have machinery you aren't supposed to have and you need a place to put it. I mean, it's a planet that's established early on. Like this is a planet that does not support biological life at all. But I'm getting aside. But anyways, as Leroy, the title robot, certain he's there by mistake. Well, he's making his mission to get back to where he's been because before being winding up there, he was like an undefeated champion. He was in a very good place as the opening chapter shows.
Yeah,
So the book, the main crux of it is his quest to get back where he was, but that storyline eventually collides with what's going on on the planet when he gets there. Is that there is this other robot calling himself the Top Dog, who
yeah,
is actively in the process of trying to conquer this planet, as where with so many machines going on, I mean, winding up on that planet, what you have is these robots who have either wound up there but not activated or not deactivated, or at this time, oftentimes, deactivated robots reactivated. Well, anyways, the Top Dog is trying to conquer this planet,
yeah,
and when he learns about Leroy, he decides, for reasons that's only known to the Top Dog, but eventually are revealed to the reader, that he wants Leroy for some purpose. So Leroy's quest to go back where he was, intersects with it, and the two storylines converge. And so you have, yeah, it's a mix of things. it's a
Yeah.
venture story, it's an action story, it's develops into a military story, and in some ways, deep at its core, I feel like there's a strange element of a sports narrative in there, which it's sort of deep in there, and I may just be looking at deeper, but maybe part of it comes from the fact that you have the fact that this combat kind of stuff that he comes from BattleBots. I mean, that's kind of a sport in of it and of itself. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. uh, uh, you've got more projects in development. What excites you about the stories you're working on now?
well, the one I'm working on right now is I'm actively working on is a meant to be a children's fairy tale. And one of the things that has me excited about it is the artwork that I'm trying to put together for it, in particular, the cover. Because when I decided, okay, I want to put together this children's fairy tale, one of the things that I went back to is in my own childhood, some of these books that I read when I was younger, they had this design style that came off as like this is the cover's assembled from construction paper kind of thing, like someone cut out construction paper and arranged it properly, and I decided I wanted to match that style. I so one of the biggest parts of it is trying to actually cut out and put together a cover, both front and back, that I mean physically assembled.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah. And then right now,
that's
what I'm
challenging.
actively working on is the interior art. So, because it's one of those things where, yeah, if you're putting together one of these children's stories, I mean, it just feels right to have artwork to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
mean it's children's books. I'll make it
yeah,
really visually appealing.
yeah.
Okay, you balance writing with retail work and being a caretaker. How do you carve out the creative space to keep building words?
Well, in some ways, I just have to make an effort at it. I mean, but there is a certain element where when I'm, in my retail job at least, it's one of those things where it can be physically demanding, but mentally it's kind of okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I have to pay attention,
yeah, but
but it doesn't require a whole lot of higher thought process. So there's a lot of opportunity when I am doing my day job to be thinking and in some way and
reworking the stories.
sometimes, kind of writing stuff in my head that, it provides a lot of time to be brainstorming and put, help put things together that I can later put down on the page. And then when it comes to the other thing, which is um, helping to take care of my grandma. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I have to keep in mind, and there are a lot of responsibilities involved, but it's also not nearly as work intensive as it might initially seem. Because my grandma, I mean, I say I refer to it as being kind of semi-independent, where
Yeah,
she doesn't need constant watching. She just needs someone who is present. And I mean, there's also a benefit that's come from it where, I mean, yeah, we live in the same house, so she's aware of stuff I'm doing, such as my writing. So from that, it has gotten me from where my previous state, where I was trying to go the traditional publishing route to, well, she asked at one point, hey, what can I do to help? And long story short, that led to where I basically shifted from the old traditional method to now I'm focusing on the kind of hybrid or self-publishing process that I think has really gained more legitimacy over the years versus once upon a time it was seen as, well, if you have to self-publish as an author, you clearly can't make it on your own, versus now there are books out there, major books that have legitimately made it, and it's the self-publishing is less about, oh, you can't make it, and more about, well, the gatekeepers may not like it, but I still believe in this
yeah,
project, so I'm just gonna go for it.
yeah. The gatekeepers may not like it, well, I still believe
Yeah.
in this project, so I'll do
Yeah.
it anyway.
I mean, I do think there are places where it is important to have gatekeepers, but at the same time, if the gatekeepers, I mean, the gatekeepers aren't always right, and it can become very easy for the gatekeepers to abuse their privileges, at which point they force people to take other options.
Yeah,
And eventually, people will notice that what the gatekeepers are doing, and are inclined to ignore them and look elsewhere.
yeah. One of the things I noticed about your profile, I know we talked about retail job and being a caretaker, is you do stand-up comedy. So for me, how does humor, through your stand-up comedy background, show up in your own writing?
Well, I will say first that yeah, I have dabbled in it. It's something that I unfortunately haven't done. I don't do that frequently, but it's more a thing of, look, I've got so many things that I work on where it's kind of a thing that do a lot more if I had more free time. But how I'd say that if there's a way it's influenced my writing, it's one, there's an a major part of how I go through, with my main writing, the book writing, is there's a I try and put a lot into the dialogue between characters, and oftentimes when I'm doing that, I will kind of be saying the lines out myself, like I'm
Yeah,
playing multiple parts of a conversation. And there's also an element that with stand-up comedy is that I I very I very much put an emphasis on being able to. I mean, with stand-up comedy, it's not just you get up on a stage and you just say whatever comes to
yeah,
your mind. It does require stuff being written out, and in a way, stand-up comedy is kind of like a short one-person theater show.
yeah,
So
yes,
yeah, so I mean, it's a form of practice for writing anyway. And in some ways, writing comedy, making things funny can be one of the most difficult kinds of writing there is.
yeah. I like what you said about stand-up comedy being a short one-person theater show, but especially when the comedians are really dramatic. They get away they get you to see the scenes. Like, oh, I was walking home the other day and I saw a man on the street, and you're like, oh yeah, and the man was like yes, and it just gets imagination flowing, and we see the scenes, and sometimes they do those voice change. You know,
Yeah.
you're familiar with what I'm talking about, right? And that for me, it's really, I'm like, wow, this is not just comedy. This is acting. This is voice. This is performance, right? This is beyond just
Yeah.
comedy. Because I could take the joke and go say it, and everybody's like, that wasn't funny. But then someone else will do the timing, the delivery, and everything, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is so funny.
Yeah. I mean, that is part, I mean, yeah, part of it. I mean, there, I mean, in some sets more than others, a major part of a comedy routine is painting a picture, and maybe not necessarily just painting a picture, but doing it in the style of a magician, where you're trying to paint a picture in such a way that the punchline is obvious, but you won't actually see it until that final punchline. So
Yeah,
yeah, as you said, I mean that requires timing, that requires carefully picking your words. Like, let me, if I can give an ex if I could give an example, because
okay,
I mean,
proceed.
some of my favorite jokes that I like to tell are kind of are have a narrative element to it, and one in particular that, well, I don't know, could I give two examples?
Okay,
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 so first
this is very
one,
interesting.
um, kind of quick and simple. So, once upon a time, there was this mathematician who had a very particular way of cooking his breakfast meats. He liked to arrange them in very specific angles, or as his friends like to say, the 6 degrees of Kevin's bacon.
Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Okay. That's the first. Wow. Okay, what about the second?
Okay, so the other one I'm particularly a fan of. Okay, so one time these two guys are driving down the road, and the passenger, can't help but notice that, they're moving really slow. And, in particular, he takes notice, the tires, the wheels, they're not moving very much. And so he turns to the driver and says, hey, can we maybe pick it up a little bit? And the driver, he turns to his passenger. He says, give them a break, will you? Can't you see they're all tired?
Wait, can you say the joke again? I'm like, I don't think I got the punchline.
Well, I may not have nailed it quite right,
No,
but
just say it again. Just say it again.
okay.
I
So
had
two
intrusive
guys
thoughts
are two
creeping.
guys are on a road trip, um, driving down the road. The passenger, he can't help but notice that the car, they're not moving very fast. They're not really getting to their destination at the speed he'd like. So he kind of takes a look around, glances, and he notices that, yeah, the wheels, they're not spinning very fast. And he asks, hey, can we maybe pick it up and, get moving? And the driver says to the passenger, yeah, give them a break, will you? Can't you see they're all tired?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, now I get it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'm so
not my
sorry.
best.
Now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not my best delivery, especially first time around. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I get it now. Can't you say they're all tired?
yes,
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. 'Cause I was following the story at the point, it was like, phew, I just, I was like, oh no, no. Yeah, so sorry about that.
yeah.
Okay, wow.
So yeah, those are prime examples of the kind of
Yeah,
comedy I like to do. And I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I'd probably spread out a little more if I did have more free time and did spend more time actually working on that. Because yeah, I really enjoy it. It's just unfortunately when you have, I mean, I have so many different directions I need to go that like stand-up comedy, while I love it, it's one of those things that's like it currently takes a back seat and it's like, okay, if someday hopefully I can make writing my primary job and I can act and I can focus on this, then I can pick up the stand-up comedy as a hobby thing again.
yeah. I have two questions, and then we'll round up the episode. The first question is, how can reading science fiction or any new genre help us think differently about our own lives?
Well, I'd say, I mean, one of the big things about science fiction is that when done properly, it allows you to consider things about the world in a way that you might not normally consider. In particular, it's there's a big element of what if where you look at the world where it requires looking at the world from an angle not you wouldn't normally consider.
Yeah,
It's in some ways that's something you have to deal, you have in all works of fiction. But
yeah,
I think one of the famous examples is, the original Star Trek series, where one of the one of the common things they did is, the Enterprise would go to this planet that was set up in such a way where it's based around this one concept, and then the episode it took a serious look at this concept, and when done right, it leads the audience to consider that concept for themselves. Asks it asks questions about it has the audience asking questions about life and thinking
yeah,
of, examining ideas.
yeah. Wow, I like that. I think so. For a lot of persons, they're into science, whether it's engineers, doctors, inventors, because they read a work of science fiction and they're like, wow, these possibilities. I'd love to bring that to life. Right? A
Yeah.
lot of persons, right? And that for me, it's really inspiring. That's just one way, reading science fiction.
Yeah, and if you look at it and going like the opposite way, one of the most famous science fiction novels is 1984, where it
George Orwell.
examines a world very much gone wrong, and people have people look to that of, it's a cautionary tale in a way of here's there are so many phrases and concepts that people pull from that science fiction novel,
Yeah,
and they look
Big
at
Brother.
like this is, yes, Big Brother. There's the attempted shrinking of language.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's very much an element that some books do better than others where you have to consider, yes, this is a work of fiction, and if a writer really wants to, the writer can make the world however that writer wants. But the best works of fiction do still have one foot in reality to make it while it's fantastic, it's still there still has to be an element of believability. I mean,
Yeah.
there are some elements of human nature that are universal. There are certain foundational principles that the world works on that are universal. Like it'd be very difficult to take a work of science fiction seriously if it decided that gravity doesn't actually work, or gravity it blatantly just decides to do its own thing as it
Yeah.
wants. But
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, um, we can. Thank you so much,
yeah,
uh,
this has been
Michael.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for just chatting with me about sci-fi and
Yeah.
really, talking about it. I wished, we could go on longer, but one of those days we'll really get to talk about sci-fi and I'll ask you a lot of questions. Um, where can listeners get the book and how can we connect with you?
Well, first, I mean, I know it's probably not the best not probably not the best way, of establishing myself and all that, but I really don't have much of a presence for people connecting with me directly.
Okay.
However, for people who want to get the book,
Okay.
either they can, I mean, it's either available on all the major online book retailers, or I like to point people, hey, go look for it on Goodreads. And Goodreads, as I understand it, just you can go from there and it'll link to a number of sites, so you can just find, hey, this is my favorite place to buy books online, and I'll take the Goodreads link to it. So,
Yeah. Okay. I'll be sure to add the relevant links
yeah.
to the
But
sites.
the full title is Junk World: The Ballad of Leroy Brown, under the name of M.K. Stangland Jr.
Yeah, okay, okay, okay. MK's. Okay, I thought it was Strangeland. My bad.
Well, you
I'm
are
starting to see arrow. I'm
yeah,
hungry.
you are not the first person to make that mistake. Yeah, I don't expect you'll be the last. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about
It's
the
it's a brain
comedy thing.
assumption.
I long ago learned to laugh about it, where I joke that I'm haunted by a very petty pirate.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we just assume things. No, once we see the word strange, you're like, oh yeah, there's an arrow, right?
Yeah.
And
No, but I've had
yeah,
people that have had the name written right in front of them, and writing it out, they still somehow find a way to add an R
yeah,
in there.
yeah. The brain,
Yar.
familiar concepts. The brain would put in
Yeah.
what it seems to be correct. Thank you so much. I'll put all the
Yeah.
relevant links in the description. It was such a delight chatting with you, and
Yeah.
I'm really glad
It's
we got
been fun.
chat
I've
about
had
it.
fun with this. I've had fun with this conversation.
That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.